Hello. This is our final video for CSCI 1061, which is going to cover shallow and deep copying. This, I think, sort of epitomizes the reason that we even use C++ in the first place, which is really to get at the most fundamental and full understanding of how computers manage memory, and there really isn't a better example than shallow and deep copying. The exercises here are going to sort of illustrate the difference between these two things, how you can implement them, and in particular, what are some use cases, for instance, for when you might want to do this. So without further ado, the first exercise is kind of just review, but it's here to set the stage. We're going to make a simple class called ingredient. You can think of like cooking ingredients. With a name and an amount. As in a main function, we're going to make an ingredient, make a second copy of that ingredient, and double the amount of the second ingredient and see what happens. So let's go right in. This is example 1. Okay, so we need a class called ingredient. It is going to, I'm going to be a little lazy today, and I'm probably going to use IOStream and namespace std. Things you probably should not be doing, but I would like to keep the code for this as concise as possible, so I'm using a couple of bad code styling approaches just for the sake of getting this just straight to the point. So I need a name. String name. I'm going to have an int amount. Seems pretty straightforward. I'm going to have a constructor ingredient, which takes a string name and an int amount, applies them. And we'll do a print method as well. Void print. Let's do print ingredient. Yeah. Just to output ingredient name. Ingredient amount. Just because I'm actually going to be using that function probably quite a bit. So here's my class. My main function, make an ingredient, all right? So ingredient I1 is an ingredient, flour, 10, and we'll make ingredient I2 equal to I1. So I'm basically just making a second ingredient, but it's going to be the same as the first one. And then I2 dot amount times equals 2. So I'm doubling how much is there, and then we'll print them all out. So we have ingredient 1 and we'll do our I1 dot print ingredient and do the same thing for ingredient 2. There, coded that real nice and quick, because it should be short. This is all stuff that at this point should be really second nature. So compile, run, everything is what we expect. Our first ingredient is flour, there's 10 of it. Our second one is flour, there's 20 of it. Everything is okay. Easy enough? All right, this is just the beginning though. It's gonna get more complicated. Okay, so next step. Exercise 2, we're gonna take our exercise we already did, except we're going to use pointers. And things are going to start to get weird. We're going to observe what happens to the amounts of the two ingredients, and we're going to see what happens if we try to include a destructor. So, duplicate our code into exercise 2. Here's our new exercise. And we're going to make these into pointers. Okay, so if that's the case, then what will we need to do? Well, we're definitely going to need these as our parameters, but here's kind of the thing, is maybe we don't really want that. I mean, passing a pointer as a parameter to the constructor is kind of weird. I do think I want a string, and I do think I want an integer, but maybe what I will do instead is I will make a new string, n, and a new int, a. And that way I will get the pointers to this string and this integer. Makes sense to me. we're going to need to get the dereference the name and dereference the amount for them. But this way we can still use the same constructor, which is kind of nice. Now, when I am getting the amount here, this is a pointer. I can't double a pointer. So I want to take this and dereference it. It's like this, right? Yeah. Dereference the pointer, and then multiply by 2. Let's see what happens. Now something weird has occurred, if you take a look. My code shouldn't have changed much. All I did was make it so that it used pointers instead of normal variables. But I doubled the, I misspelled ingredient here, which I'll fix. I doubled the amount of flour in the second ingredient, which also caused the amount of flour to be doubled in the first one. So even though I made a copy of my ingredient here, where did I make that spelling error, by the way? It's over here, ingredient. Even though I only wanted to double how much flour is in the second one, I've also actually doubled how much is in the first one. And this is what is called shallow copying. When I make I2 into I1, what I'm saying is that I'm not actually making a brand new ingredient. I kind of am, but the member variables name and amount that belong to my second ingredient refer to the same variables as they do in the first one, which means any changes I make to the amount and the name of either I1 or I2 will affect both. And you can see, for instance, if I do something like, star I1.name equals, cheese instead, watch what happens. They're both called cheese now, and it's because they're both referring to the same things, since when I'm copying a ingredient into another, I'm basically just saying, hey, give me the exact same, just assign the exact same member variables, which means the exact same pointers. So, not usually what we want. There may be cases where this is okay. For instance, perhaps it's a scenario where the member variables are both going to refer to the same database and you want the database to be consistent for all of your objects, then maybe that's okay. But probably in most scenarios, you don't want this to happen. So we need a solution. And our solution comes in our next exercise. So, I actually forgot. I'm supposed to try to include a destructor to see what happens. So let's make sure I got that as well. And you'll see that it's going to not go so well. If I do ingredient, I'm not able to, there we go. So my ingredient destructor, if I try to do, delete name, delete amount, it's going to have quite a bad time. It'll compile, but it'll crash. And the reason that it crashes is because the name and the amount of I1 is the same as the name and the amount of I2. So when the computer does cleanup and automatically runs this deconstructor for the first ingredient, it then runs it for the second ingredient, which had its name and amount deleted already, which is a problem. So either you would need to modify this deconstructor to verify that name and amount actually haven't been deleted already, which is a little bit tricky, or you can do what we're about to do in this next exercise. So let's go straight to that, which is make a copy constructor for ingredient. And this copy constructor is going to go in our main function. We're going to ask the user for the name and amount of an ingredient, make 3 copies of it, and modify them so each one has twice the amount of the previous. So here's what we'll do. I'm going to make a duplicate. Okay. Oh, we should close this as well. Make sure we don't mix up these files. Ask the user for the, okay, so let's start by making our copy constructor. So right now we have just the normal constructor, which is here. We're going to make a new one. And our new one is going to also be called ingredient, because all these are. And it is going to take as parameter a, I think it's constant, a other ingredient. I believe this is right. Yeah, okay, that looks right to me. And so, given another ingredient, to make a copy of it, I'm going to assign the name to be a new string and the value of the string is going to be the other's name. And I'll do the exact same thing for the amount. It's a new int, the other amount. And so now what I've done is I've said whenever I want to copy an ingredient given another one, which is what's happening down here, I am going to, and this specifically also has to do with constructing this originally. If I later go down and I say I1 equals I2, we're not going to be quite there yet. But at least when I'm creating I2 and I'm assigning it to, giving it the parameter of I1, I'm going to make a brand new string that happens to have the same value as the original. Same thing for the amount. And that way, these modifications are going to be unique to each of the two different ingredients. So with just this new copy constructor, and that's like the official name of it here, I actually will see that this will work differently. So I'm going to change the, now I think it said we're going to do something different here, which was ask the user for name and amount, make 3 copies, modify them so each one has twice the amount of the previous. But just to sort of demonstrate how this has already worked for us in a way, if I run this, you can see now that we're back to having flour be 10 and 20 for the amount that we doubled. And now we can make a bunch of these, for instance. We can say, let's ask the user, choose an ingredient, and we'll see in their ingredient into a string. So this is input, and then cout choose an amount, c into amount. Okay, so now I got their ingredient, I got their amount, and so I can do ingredient 1 is ingredient input and amount. Input 2 equals input 1, and we'll double how much is here. We'll get rid of the cheese thing. And then I'll just do this another couple times. So I3 is I2, and I4 is I3, and we're going to double how much is in each one. And then we'll print out all 4. 4, 3. All right, let's see how it goes. So flour, 100. And there we go. So just to review what's happening in this main function, we're picking our ingredient, we're choosing how much is there, and now we make our first flour, which had 100, because I chose flour and 100. The second one is the same thing, but double how much of the amount. The third one is the same as number 2, but double the amount. And the fourth one is the same as number 3, but double that amount, over and over. And if I don't include this here, this copy constructor, what you see happen, flour 100, is that it treats them all as identical. I double the amount of every ingredient because they're all referring to the same variables, and at the end it crashes because it tries to delete the variables 4 separate times, which isn't really going to work. But with the copy constructor, I've told the computer that given another ingredient, take its values and allocate new dynamic memory specifically for the amounts that are there. And then each of those is going to be deleted independently. Okay, so we've now managed to deep copy, which is what's happening here, an ingredient. So we're on the right track. Now we can move forward. Okay, so exercise 4. Write an assignment operator. We're going to overload the equals operator explicitly. In our main function, we're going to prompt the user for 2 ingredients. So this is name and amount, and we're going to modify one of them into the other based on their preference. So duplicate. Now the reason for this exercise, I will show you in a moment, is that currently we can't do something like this. So let's say that we have ingredient 2 is I1, and then we do something like the following. Or actually, we'll go down here, and we'll say, when we're finished, let's make ingredient 4 into ingredient 1 again, and just observe to see what happens. flour 100. So we notice it crashes. Seems kind of sad. Why did it crash? Well, when I tell the computer set I1 equal to I4, what did I tell it to do? Well, what I told it was take all of its member variables and match them up. So I4 now points to the amount and name that is pointed to by I1. But that's not what I wanted. I wanted these to be unique duplicate, deep copies of each other. And so what I've done is I've essentially, even though I have a copy constructor, which helps me deep copy when I create a new variable, a new object, I should say, it still means I'm shallow copying when I try to write code like this. So this is no good. I can't actually get this to go just yet. I need to overload the assignment operator so that it not only gives me the same values, which is what I want. I presumably want to make it so I4 has flour 100, but also so that it makes deep copies of them and doesn't actually crash everything. So for that, I'm going to need to, and now, so I gotta think about, okay, what is the return value variable, return value of my function? Well, it's almost an ingredient, but I want it specifically to be a reference to an ingredient because I want to be able to take something and modify it. For instance, I might want to say, you know, I4 it becomes I1. I don't want it to be temporary. I want this to be a permanent modification. The operator is equals, of course, and the parameter is the same as if I was doing a copy constructor, which is this. Okay, now, assuming that I have, you know, I4 equals I1, something like that, what do I want to do? Well, first of all, I would think about what happens if somebody does I1 equals I1. It should do nothing, but someone might be foolish enough to write that, and if they do, and my code is going to do a bunch of changes and deletions and stuff, that could be an issue. So we're going to verify that this is not the other. If they are referring to the same thing, then obviously I don't want to do anything. I'm just going to return this. But if they are different things, then, well, what do I want to do? Remember, I'm declaring, I'm making all of these, all this memory dynamically allocated, which means if I set I4 equal to I1, I want to delete my original stuff that was in I4. So I need to delete the name, and I need to delete the amount. And now the new name is going to be a new string, and kind of just like over here, it's actually, I think, literally the same code. Use new string, just like this. And the amount is going to be this. Boom, easy. And now, when I do I4 equals I1, it won't crash. Flour 100. Look at that. It actually works exactly as it wants to. The flour is now back to being 100 like it was instead of being the 800 after doubling several times. Okay, so let's, we know that we've done it right. Now we can just finish the last step, which is the new main function that we're going to do. So we're going to get rid of a bunch of this stuff. Just want 2 ingredients for now. Should be fine. We're not going to double them. And we're not necessarily going to do I1 equals I2. It depends. So we'll do enter a first ingredient. Enter a first amount. Then we'll do this again. Second ingredient. And a second amount. And that will be for I2. Do you prefer the first or a second? And so if input is 1, then we will say I2 equals I1. Otherwise, I1 equals I2. We'll ignore them putting in something else. And then we'll print them both out, see what happens. Okay. Okay, so let's say flour, 100, cheese, 300. I prefer cheese. And now they're both cheese. And if I go back and I say flour, 100, bacon, 0, this is the first, I can make them both into flour. And so this is going to do a proper deep copy of them and make sure that when I go to delete everything, they are deleting them separately, despite the fact that they are quite obviously different. If I want to, for instance, I can also, just to sort of demonstrate that they are unique from each other, I can say, I2 dot, we'll double how much is there. How do we double it again? Steal from here. There we go, double the amount. Doubling I2. Oops. And then we'll print them out again. The reason I want to do this is just to make sure that we do have a separation between the two ingredients even after we have equated them. So one last time, flour 100, cheese 200, I prefer cheese, and now I can see that I have 200 of each cheese, and I can double how much is in ingredient 2 to 400, but it is still separate cheese from the first one. And this is exactly what I want. So hooray, I am on to a nice start with my copying. But there's more to it, which we're going to get to in a moment. Okay, let's go up to the next level. We have our ingredients, and now we're going to make a recipe class. The recipe class is going to have a vector of ingredients, specifically vector, we'll say ingredient pointers to be precise, and a string member variable for the name of the recipe. We'll write a copy constructor for a recipe and demonstrate shallow copying by copying a recipe. So let's take a look at what this is going to look like. Okay. Right, so I'm going to need a recipe class. Let's actually take this and put it where we're going to be writing our code, which is down here. Okay, a class called recipe. Again, being a little lazy with things, we're going to have a vector of ingredient pointers called ingredients, sounds fine to me, and a name. When we create a recipe given a name, it's going to be, I suppose we can do nothing with, we can just have the ingredients sit there and that's fine. And then we will have our name be n, and that's it. Now, we want to, since this is public, we don't really need any like getter or setters. We can just directly push back into the ingredients list. But let's say that we want to do a copy. We want to make a copy of our recipe, right? So when I don't know if I have to write a copy constructor for this or not, but I'm going to do it anyway just for demonstration purposes. So given another recipe, if I want to construct it, my ingredients is going to be the others ingredients, and the name is going to be the others name. And we'll have a method for print recipe as well. And so recipe name, and then for recipe in ingredients, or no, it's ingredient. Yeah, ingredient pointer I in ingredients, I arrow print ingredient. Okay. So I think that should be sufficient. Now we have a whole bunch of code here, which is not particularly useful. So I'm going to delete most of this. I'm actually going to go back to exercise 3 because, or actually no, not 3, 2. Because, it doesn't really matter. Let's close them all. We're going to just make ourselves some ingredients. We're going to make some flour. We're going to make some sugar. Let's say 100 sugar because I love sugar. ingredient 3, salt, I suppose. Just 1. Okay, so I got my 3 ingredients. Let's make a recipe R. R dot ingredients dot pushback I1. Make sure that's syntactically correct, because if it's not, I'm gonna fix it. No, it's not. What mistake do I have right now? Vector does not name a type because I forgot to include vectors, so that would help. Let's try that again. Whoop. Where's the issue? No matching call for recipe constructor. Right, because I forgot to name it something. Let's give it a name. Recipe R equals recipe, cookies. Sure, why not? Still unhappy. What's my other problem? It's pushback. Right, I can't push back the ingredient itself. I have to give it the pointer. There we go. All right, how's that? Okay, everything seems all right so far. So let's push back all of our ingredients and then make a recipe R2, which is R1, or just R. We'll call it R1 to make it a little bit more clear. And we'll say R2.name equals cake. And then we'll print them both. R1.print recipe and R2.print recipe. And now let's see what happens. So we got flour, sugar, and salt in each one. We made a copy. We changed the name of R2 to cake. Let's actually jack up how much sugar is in there. So R2.ingredients, and I can access index 2. That's that ingredient, and we'll access the amount. So this is a pointer to the thing. So I need to arrow amount, and this is a pointer which I need to dereference. And that's going to be, oh sorry, it shouldn't be 2, it should be 1 if I want to make the sugar, and we'll make it 200. So for my cake, go to the second ingredient, which is the sugar. The amount of sugar that's there is a pointer, so dereference it and assign it to be 200. And then we're going to print out both recipes and see what happens. What do we have? So our cookies has 10 flour, 200 sugar, which isn't quite right, and 1 salt. And our cake has 10 flour, 200 sugar, and 1 salt. I was able to change the name separately, and that seems to make a lot of sense because when I copied the other recipe, the name is just a string. So when I modify the string is modified. But the vector of ingredient pointers, because I copied that, it did not do a deep copy. It did a shallow copy. And so when I modified how much sugar was associated with my cake recipe, it also modified how much sugar was associated with my cookies recipe, which is, again, not really what I want. I forgot to do a deconstructor. You can probably imagine that the deconstructor is not going to have a good time, but just to sort of demonstrate for you. So recipe, and so for is it ingredient star I in ingredients, I want to delete it, and ingredients dot clear. And this will probably crash it, I'm guessing. Yep, it's pretty unhappy. And again, this is just because of the shallow copying. So I delete the first one and it's fine, but the second one, not so great. So, okay, I have an issue. I gotta fix this. So let's see what we can do. Okay. We're going to extend the recipe class to properly handle deep copying of the contained ingredient objects when copying a recipe object. This is exactly what we're looking for. It just means we have a small little change to make. So, in here, I'm going to make a new copy of this. Okay. And what we're working on is deep copying our recipes. Okay. Right now, when we copy a recipe from another recipe, all we're doing is we are just taking the ingredients vector and just making another one of all the same things with all the same references. It's not particularly useful. So here's what we're going to do instead is we're going to modify this so that it does copy the name because that seems fine. But for each ingredient pointer in the other ingredients, we are going to push back a new ingredient. And so I'm making a new, like, actual, a new dynamic, a pointer to a newly dynamically created ingredient, which is going to have the same properties as the other ingredient. So it's going to take I and dereference it to get its data and put that into our newly created ingredient. And that newly created one is what we're going to reference into our recipe. I think that's actually it. I'm not sure if I need to do this clear or not. I guess I can leave it. It should be fine. But if it's a problem, I'll get rid of it. But let's see what happens now with this. So okay, yeah, I think it's unhappy with the clearing thing. So let's see what happens if we just delete that. Yeah. Oh no, it's still really mad about the deletion. I think it has to do with. I think it has to do with what's going on right here. Oh, it may also. I wonder if it may also have to do with the. Oh no, so this is fine. This deletes the name and the amount. And then the other one, I think probably the issue is that it wants me to delete these separately. So let's see what happens if I do that. If I do delete I1, I2, I3, or is that more helpful? Or does that just make it worse? Class ingredient. Expected a pointer. Oh. Oh, it might be because these are created dynamically. So let's see what happens if I change that. If I say to make these dynamically. Whoop. Let's try that. Okay, there we go. So my issue was, just in case you're wondering why I did some weird stuff there, these were not created dynamically, which I should have. By making them not dynamic, some kind of wacky things happen when I start putting them into these ingredients here, which is probably not something I want going on. Just for the sake of like comparison, I can go back here and fix that as well, which I should do. So star, 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 new, 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 remove these. And you'll see that my example 5 still does the like problematic thing it did before. In that it makes the cookies and the cake still both have 200 sugar, and actually it crashes as well, which is to kind of be expected. But now exercise 6, which I have fixed, does what I want. The sugar of the cookies has not been changed despite the fact that I have modified how much sugar was there because I have properly deep copied them now. And my deep copy is not that complicated. Instead of just trying to duplicate the vector that's there, I need to, for each item of my other's ingredients, for each ingredient that's there, make a new one, which is a dynamically created copy of it, and put that into this recipe. And that way, this recipe, although it contains all identical items to the other one, they are separate items. They're not references to the same one. Okay. So that's good for that exercise. And then we can move on to the next one. Okay, where am I? I am looking at the wrong file. Okay, here we go. Exercise 7. So we got recipes, we got ingredients, and we're going to now have bakery items. And a bakery item is a recipe with a cost. So, cookies, and here's how much they're worth. So my bakery item is going to have a pointer to a recipe object and an additional member variable for the item's price. We're going to make sure we can deep copy a bakery item, and modifying a recipe should not affect a bakery item. Okay. So let's get going. Delete these. Clear out this. And make a new class. We're at the point where definitely, if you were like doing this as anything other than an example, you should be splitting this into multiple files at this point because there's already 3 classes that are going to be in here. But again, just to keep it all nice and concise, I'm going to leave it all together. So bakery items. A bakery item is going to have a pointer to a recipe, and it's going to have a price, which is an integer. Okay. We need a bakery item constructor. And for this, I guess we'll do this 2 different ways. So one option is you can just give it a recipe and a price, and it will make that. And the other option is that you can give it another bakery item. So if you give it a recipe star R and a price P, then it will make the recipe be a newly dynamically created recipe with the contents of R, and the price is just going to be P. That makes it nice and easy. Okay. And alternatively, you can make your bakery item with another recipe. And if so, then we do the same thing for the recipe. Actually, it's going to be very similar to this. So I'm going to take all this and just make necessary changes. So the new recipe is created using the others recipe, and the price is created using the others price. Since price is not a pointer, it's not dynamically created here, I'm just going to directly copy it the same way I normally would, and that will be fine because it is not a reference. But because this recipe is a pointer, I need to dynamically create a new recipe that contains the contents of the other one, just to make sure that I'm not duplicating, I'm not modifying the same thing. We also can kind of steal the code we wrote earlier for copying an ingredient, and we'll make that for copying a recipe or a bakery item as well. I didn't put it in the recipe, but it is something you could do as well. Just so you can have it for the bakery item, we'll make the changes here, which is really just making the bakery item, doing a bakery item. There's another one, delete the recipe. There isn't an amount because the price is just the price. The price, in fact, is just going to be the other price. But the recipe is going to be a new recipe given the others recipe. Deep copying. And it was nice and quick, which is really cool. So now that I have that, I suppose I can also have a deconstructor for my bakery item, which just deletes the recipe. And we should also print out the bakery item as well. Void print bakery item. The bakery. So bakery item. And then we'll do recipe arrow print recipe. And the cost is the price. Okay. Down here, I got my recipes for cookies and cakes. And so instead of printing recipes for these, I'm going to make these into bakery items. So bakery item. Actually, what we'll do is we'll make several cakes. So bakery item BI1 is going to be a new. Do I make a new bakery item? No, just make a standard bakery item. Is going to be a bakery item given the reference to R2, which was our cake that now has 200 sugar, and the cost is going to be 20. I would say 20. And I should be able to do bakery item B2, BI2 equals BI1. Bakery item BI3 equals BI1. Actually, let's just do these first two. So now they're duplicates. We're gonna jack up the price, I think, of or actually let's add some salt and $1 to one of them. So how about BI2? We're going to, let's see, so given my bakery item, I need to grab the recipe. The recipe is going to contain the ingredients. And so inside it's going to have the ingredients. And the second one is the salt. And for that, it is also pointer. So I'm going to take that, dereference it, and add one salt. Add one salt. And then kind of the same thing. Well, actually, no, here it's going to be a little simpler. So I'm just going to do B2 dot amount, or price, plus equals 1. So add $1. And this don't need to dereference because it's easy. Okay, so I added a salt and I added $1 to my bakery items. And I also want to actually print out recipe R2. And this is our cake recipe. And we'll do that last. But before that, we'll do bi1.print bakery item, bi2.print bakery item. So if we did this correctly, our first bakery item is our original cake. Nothing interesting. Our second one should be our cake with a little bit of extra salt and $1 more expensive. And our recipe for cakes should be unaffected by anything. In fact, for reference, what I should probably do is I should even modify let's modify bakery item 1 as well. And for that, we'll cut the sugar in half. Have the sugar B1, bi1.price minus equals 1, $1 cheaper. And so if I did this correctly, oops, $1 cheaper. If I did this correctly, the first cake should have half the sugar and $1 cheaper. The second one should have 1 salt and be $1 more expensive, so it should be $2 apart. And then the cake recipe should be unchanged from its original setup, which was 200 sugar, 1 salt. Let's find out. Oops. Okay. What did I mess up? Price is not a type. That makes sense. I put in price over, where is it here? It should be an integer. That makes more sense. Okay, so I accessed the ingredient, but I meant to access the amount of the ingredient. So given the ingredient, I need the amount. I don't want to change the name of salt or sugar, I just want to access them. And that seems to have worked. Now if we did this correctly, let's see what we got. We have our first bakery item is our cake with half the sugar, so it only costs 19. Our second one has an extra salt, so it costs 21, 2 apart from the other cake, so that seems to be good. And our original recipe had 200 sugar and 1 salt, which means it is unchanged. So we've successfully deep copied bakery items, where each bakery item has a recipe independent of the other ones. But if I really want to, at the end of the day, I can always still go back and do bi2 equals bi1, and it should copy everything over. And now when I copy over and print out bakery item 2, it should be everything the first one is, which is the half sugar normal salt. There it is, half sugar normal salt for that extra bakery item. All right, we're almost there. One more to go, and then we're finished. Okay, the last one. We've got our bakery items that are recipes or prices. Our recipes have lists of ingredients, and those ingredients have names and amounts. And finally, we're going to make a bakery. Importantly, we need to make a bakery class that allows you to copy a bakery. And let's make that work. duplicate into exercise 8. Okay, we are all the way down below bakery item into this last class we're making, which is a bakery. And I think what I'm actually going to do to save myself a bit of typing time is I'm going to copy the bakery item, or actually not bakery item, I want to copy the recipe. And the reason I want to copy a recipe is because a bakery is going to just have, instead of a vector of ingredients, is going to be a vector of bakery items. And most of the way that this works actually should be the exact same as the recipe, just with some modifications. So let's see what we have to change to get this to work. Obviously the class is called bakery. It's not going to have a vector of ingredients, it's going to have a vector of bakery items. It's going to be items. The bakery doesn't have a name. I guess you can give it one if you really want, but sure, why not? We'll give it a name. It's our bakery name. Our bakery, given another bakery, if we want to copy one, we copy the name, of course, and then for each item, which is a bakery item, in its items dot pushback a new bakery item. Okay, the deconstructor for bakery means go to each bakery item and delete it. Do we have a deconstructor? Yeah, we do, which is good. And we're going to print the bakery. Bakery items in. So instead of bakery items, we'll say printing name, because that'll be the name of the bakery, items. And then for each bakery item in the items, print the bakery item. And that saved a bit of typing time, right? I didn't have to write it all out. It's really just the same idea that's going on with the recipe, except now we're just another level of the hierarchy up. Okay, now we got our cookies, we got our cake, we got our 2 bakery items, which are the cake with some prices. We got some half sugar, some extra salt and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is at the end, we'll not do the copying thing here. We know the recipe thing works fine. So I got these 2 bakery items, so I'm going to make a new bakery, B. Michael's Bakery, because why not? B dot items dot pushback B address of B1. So B2. Okay, so my bakery has the half sugar and the extra salt bakery in it. Then we're going to make another bakery, B2, which is B. So we'll call it B1. And we're pushing back bakery item 1, bakery item 2. There we go. Okay, so bakery B1 is my bakery. The items are going to have bakery item 1 and bakery item 2. We're going to make a second bakery, and this one is going to be called, really creatively, not Michael's Bakery. Actually, we'll do LEHCIM's Bakery is my name backwards. Okay, so different bakery, and then for each item in it, we're going to add 1,000 flour because we feel like it. So for each item in B2.items. So each item is and we have to, I'm using auto here, but I probably shouldn't because I do need to actually think about what this is. So each uses a bakery item pointer, I believe, which means that for this item, I need to use arrow to reference the contents of it. A bakery item contains a recipe, so I need to grab the recipe. The recipe contains ingredients. The So the recipe contains the ingredients. This is the first ingredient is the flour, and I want the amount of it, and that's a pointer, so I need to dereference the whole thing. All this requires you to like really think about how all these things all connect together. I may have even made a mistake, but we'll verify when we run it. And we're just going to actually set it to be equal to 1,000. So we're just going to have everything has 1,000 flour because we can. And then to wrap it up, we'll get rid of these print statements, and we'll do B1 dot print bakery, B2 dot print bakery. If I do this correctly, the one that's not my bakery should have all the flour. Mine should be okay. Let's find out. Oh no, something crashed. That's not good. I think it's a case of these bakery items not being dynamic, which they should be. So bakery items star new bakery item, which means this should be an arrow, 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 which means I should be just passing these. Let's see if that helps. Still unhappy. Okay, let's see. For each bakery item, delete it. Could be that the recipe as well is dynamic. So let's see here. Recipe star R1 is a new recipe. Arrow, arrow, arrow. Star 2 is equal to R1. Use the arrow. Use the arrow. How about now? Oh, what did we mess up? Oh, I have an ampersand hiding over here, which I should not. Okay, I do want to fix this core dump problem. I do see that at least most of this is working. You know, the flour of mine is fine, and it also includes the half sugar extra salt. Oh, did it put both of the same thing in? Wait a second here. What did I put into my bakery? Something is amiss. Let's see here. Have the sugar and make it $1 cheaper. And this is an extra salt and $1, but it didn't seem to work. I think, oh, I'm missing the assignment operator, I think, for bakery item. Oh no, not bakery item, for bakery. Yes, for bakery. When I try to copy a bakery, or even a recipe, it looks like, yeah, both of these seem to not quite do what I want. Which means I need to implement these assignment operators for my code. We'll do it for recipe first. So recipe, overload the equals operator for recipe, assuming they're not the same thing. Are there dynamic components to recipe? Yes, there's a vector. So we'll do ingredients.clear. I think that's what I want. And then you know, name is fine. Name can just be the other name. And then ingredients, for each, basically this, right? For each ingredient in the other thing, we make a new ingredient inside of it. And then similarly for the, then this compiles, right? Yes, we're okay? No issues, good. And the same thing for a bakery is when I make a bakery equal to another bakery, I want to make sure I am creating fresh copies. Bakery fresh copies, you could even say. Items.clear, the name is just the other name. for each bakery item inside the other items, we're making a new bakery item in our vector. Still unhappy. That's not good. And we see that we have another problem here, which is that the two cakes are duplicates, but they shouldn't be. They should be different because bakery item B1 is my new bakery item that has my first recipe that costs 20 and everything. Now, it looks like they're both B1 and B2 refer to the same thing, which is not what I want. When I create B1, I think it's actually because I'm doing this dynamically that's messing up. So what if I don't? What if I do this? If I go back to doing this not dynamically. Or actually, what I can do is, what if I do, I make it dynamic, but I said I make a new bakery item given B1. And this is a new, I mean, this won't actually matter, I don't think. And then here, they're just bakeries, so that should be fine. Let's see what happens now. Whoa, it's not happy. Matching call, right, because I need the reference to the bakery. Whoop. No, it should be, okay, no, maybe it was fine. Was it a different thing that I was looking at? For bakery item, where's my constructor? My bakery item takes a, oh, it's not, I'm not supposed to pass it this, I'm supposed to pass it the bakery item itself. There we go. I need to dereference my first cake to put it in my second one. Okay, there we go. Hey, that looks a lot better. In fact, it looks like it actually worked. So, a little bit of debugging there, namely the fact that I was not making things dynamic was actually contributing to more problems, which you may not expect. But the issue that I just fixed was that my second cake, I was trying to just say B1 equals B2. That just says make two pointers point to the same thing. That's not what I want. What I want is for my second bakery item to be a brand new bakery item that refers to the same data as the first, but I want them to be separate in the computer. I want, bakery item 1 is over here, bakery item 2 is over here. They're supposed to be referring to different things. For the first cake, I have the sugar and it's $1 cheaper. For the second cake, I add a salt and it's $1 more expensive. And my bakery has both of these. Backwards me's bakery has them, but the flour is up to 1,000. And when I print out my bakery, it's got my cakes with half sugar and extra salt. The other bakery has 1,000 flour. The costs are the same, and also it's got the like extra salt and all that, because it's got copies of what I had originally. But when I modify the flour, it doesn't mess up my bakery. My bakery is still safe because they're independent items, and that's that. So that I think concludes our discussion of deep and shallow copying. It's really, I think like once you're able to sort of master this topic, you really master the core of this course, which is all about understanding these interactions between classes, between memory, how it's being managed, how dynamic memory is working. And I think if this is something you can understand, then most of the rest of this course is actually not too bad. Definitely, I learned, I think, while going through this, that there really weren't any cases where using auto was actually a good thing. In fact, it actually just made stuff more confusing for me because I had to think even more about what the heck kinds of objects I was dealing with. So this might be actually a good case study of why you may not want to use auto at all. Because once I realized, oh, this is an ingredient pointer, that actually helped me to build lines of code such as this one, which is also kind of a messy line of code. I think if you wanted to make some of this code a little nicer and cleaner, maybe what you could do is change some of these into methods. For instance, like make some methods that allow you to modify elements of bakery items or something like that. And of course, I shortcutted a fair bit using namespace std, which you should not do. And finally, I think if you want to really make this into a great example, I would recommend splitting this into separate files and then including the ones that you need to for it to work. because this program is already very long. 175 lines is quite a bit. You probably could split this up into separating the different classes that are here and then having a main function all on its own that includes the other files. So, but that is it. We have reached the end. I will not be recording any more videos for this course because I think this is the last main topic that we have to go through, but it is nevertheless quite an important topic, so hopefully you watch it. Lots of examples will be posted on Canvas for your reference, so check them out as well. And really just practice, practice, practice. You cannot master any of this content by watching my videos. They are not useful for that purpose. These are just here to help you if you get stuck. And so I really encourage you to even maybe consider going all the way back to the start of the course and go through all the exercises again, because you do want to be able to actually yourself write all of the code that we've done without getting extra assistance, because you won't have that all the time. So that is it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you around. Take it easy. Bye-bye.